Hey, Alex,
Yes, Sarah?
how do you feel about swinging?
Like all the back and forth kind of makes me nauseous, I guess.
No, I don't mean on the playground. I'm talking about the lifestyle. Are you into the lifestyle?
Oh, like fish keeping? Aquaculture? I guess that like started as a hobby, but I would say it's more like a lifestyle for me now.
Wife swapping.
What? Wife swapping? I mean, there's some things I would change about you, but I don't know if I want to trade out the whole thing.
Oh my God. Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us and really charming people that every once in a while do awkward intros. I'm Sarah. I'm a queer, non-monogamous therapist, parent, and writer.
And I'm her husband, Alex, aquaculturist. And I don't think that was awkward at all, actually. Awkward culture.
Awkward culture. You are an awkward culture enthusiast.
That's my lifestyle, awkward culture.
I'm Jessica, resident monogamist, and I've been around producing this podcast for 4 seasons now in hopes of talking about sex parties.
All right, Jess, this one's for you.
Yes.
So today, to help us do that, we have a special guest, Lissa. She's going to hold our hand through some of this like sex party shyness and finally explain the upside down pineapple business to me. Welcome, Lissa. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So, Lissa, you're the organizer of a sex-positive group called Weekday Pineapples. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And tell us a little bit about how did we rope you into coming on the show today and talking about swinging and the lifestyle of group sex.
So Alex asked me to be on the podcast. We have a common partner.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was going to say you keep having sex with my girlfriend.
Oh, yeah. Well,
no, just kidding.
So, I guess that's how you located me, although we've met before. And why you approached me, I'm guessing because I enjoy talking about this topic. Mm-hmm. And the group is something that's existed for about a year and really grew out of several friends that I thought should meet each other. And so tried to make like a regular weekday meetup at bars around town, sort of just get like-minded people together, have them have a platform to meet each other and also to check out places we hadn't gone or hadn't thought to go. And then also make it no RSVP so that everyone's lives are busy. You don't have to tell anyone whether you're coming or not. Just show up. And I just noticed that was way less intimidating for people to say, I will try, and actually got a lot more people to show up because you can show up late. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything that you can show up late for, I am
perfect.
More likely to go to.
And the accepting culture includes accepting that we have lives and no shame in being late. You show up, great.
I love it.
What inspired you to start that?
A few things. I had been kind of loosely part of different groups that had some sort of chat going on that would plan events or mostly just chat to meet up with each other. And felt like it was really led by the men of the group. Mm-hmm. Not to say that the women weren't involved, but definitely the vibe I felt was very bro-y. And, some people love that. For me, I felt... I personally
love it.
Yeah. You don't love that, bros. So nothing against them, but I felt like I kept meeting people that maybe didn't fit that mold, and I wanted to bring them together. And I've always sort of been someone where I went to any sort of event, sexy or not, and been like, here's how I could do this better. And so I decided that there were a couple things that I wanted to do, and one of them being creating an environment if someone that came outside that was similar to me. So if a woman or someone that identifies as a woman would come in, that I could guarantee to them that they could feel comfortable with everyone in this group so that they would be somewhat vetted by the other women of the group.
Cool.
And so just that you could tell someone that. So that meant that the group grew really fast because there are a lot of women. So it's really been going strong for a year now. And we meet about twice a month. And then other events stem from those meetups as well.
That's great. So you're vetting or vouching for the men in the group on some level is what you're saying?
Men, everyone. And essentially how it works is there's a core group of people that have been in it for a while, and they can bring anyone they want to an event. And through the process of getting to know this person or this couple or anyone, if we feel comfortable with them, they start to be slowly integrated into the core group.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to come back to talking about physical and emotional safety a little bit more.
Yeah.
And before I do that, let's back up a bit. Okay. We've used the term swinger and lifestyle already so far. And I'm wondering, can you just do some defining of terms for us?
Ooh.
How do you define? What do those words mean to you? What words are we missing in talking about?
I'm definitely not the expert. So I will answer it to the best of my knowledge. But lifestyle, I believe, is a newer term from the term swinger. At least for me, the term swinger evokes the 70s style of key parties where you drop a key in. And those are very male-led. So that's, I guess, why I would steer away from that. Lifestyle for me includes asking for consent a lot more. There used to be an old mentality with swinging that, like, if you were there, that was permission. Yeah, so things have changed a lot. Permission you regularly have to get. And so that is part of lifestyle. I would say lifestyle is a majority of couples. There are other people that identify as poly that are lifestyle. And then there's poly people that don't identify as lifestyle. Our group is a little mixture of all of those. So there are lifestyle, let's just say for a couple, there's lifestyle couples that purely do everything together. And then there's lifestyle couples that also do things apart. I would consider that poly if you're dating apart as well.
Right.
Whether they identify that or not is totally up to them. But then also, I know quite a few people that are poly and have multiple people, all of which are in our group. So if that makes sense, does that describe the difference?
Yeah.
Well, and you would say for you, I think when we were talking before, you mentioned that, like, for you, you're usually like sort of presenting in these spaces as a couple or like together with your partner in some way, shape, or form. I am, yeah.
We do everything together, and it's exciting for us to do it together. We have horror stories together. We have, a full gambit of things. Other couples, it seems like they, if they've been together a long time, part of the joy is getting to try out new things that they've been with one partner. They want to see what other flavors are out there. So they do enter the lifestyle together. But the types of occasions they're trying to involve in seem to be dating separately. And I mean, there's no right way. I've found very great people in both camps, but it'll be interesting. Like, it's really interesting to see people that come into it and who connects with who. And I notice couples that are in the couple-only stance tend to play with other couples like that. And then what I would consider a poly lifestyle couple tends to play with other poly lifestyle couples.
Oh, that is interesting.
So they're kind of like match up based on.
I noticed that.
Like,
like and people. Also it gives you the freedom if you are a poly lifestyle couple. It's really hard to find 4 people where everybody likes each other. If you don't have to worry about that and you can go find someone you like, it doesn't have to be a partner finds a partner. Like what do you call it? A square. So it is, but say I was straight, my partner was straight, and we're going out with 2 straight people. That is an extremely hard equation to work out where everyone's happy. And what I like to say when it happens and you have a partner that's really excited, but you're not, is a little bit of taking one for the team. And I try to steer clear of that, but I don't know. I also just really like to see my partner happy. And it's one thing if you're just like not as excited about the other person versus dislike them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the would it happen again? Probably not. But one time, sure.
Yeah, this is so interesting because it's like I have just like so many reactions to it, or
away.
like
React away,
or like putting myself in those situations potentially. It's like makes me very nervous. Like the idea of navigating all of those things and somebody who's like out there being poly in a lot of like kind of like one-on-one contexts, and then like we sort of have like dated individuals together, and like that's. But usually like moving pretty slowly.
So when you say nervous, what part makes you nervous?
Good question. I think just the idea of like experiences being like activating. I guess there could be a lot of reasons for that, but like jealousy or like trying to like read people's discomfort. I think the idea of like taking one for the team.
I guess that was a bad way to put it.
No, I mean,
I think what you're conveying there is flexibility.
Yes. And I guess that sounds bad too, taking one for the team, because it's more that I'm more accepting, especially if I see my partner's really excited, than I would be if I was just on a one-on-one date with this other person.
Right.
But I was going to tell you, as far as nervous, you do get nervous. I would say one of the fun parts we have on a first date with another couple is that we get ready together and we have the same first date nerves that you would as a single person, but we get to experience it together. It's really fun. Do you look hot? Do I look hot? What do you think? We've had a chat with him. What's your vibe? All of this stuff. And that feels the same to me. So the nerves I would have had as a single person dating, I just have the same ones with someone else that has it in common. But the better part is when you're by yourself and you go on a bad date with one other person, you only have yourself to commiserate with. You can go tell other people, but they're never going to have witnessed it. I've had a number of horrible dates with another couple and hilarious evenings to follow with my partner on. And then stories later where you're like, do you remember when that happened? Or we'll pass a restaurant. We're like, I am never eating there again because that was horrible,
Okay, now you have to just share a detail of one such horrible date.
Oh.
What made one of these dates so horrible?
Oh, and gosh, horrible is also a really emphatic word.
Like, is it like that the people are not, they don't seem like they're on the same page together?
Sure. No, I totally have an example. We had planned a date, and I would say that we felt like with the conversation, everything was going great. Pictures looked great. We didn't do any video chatting or anything, but pictures and text. And we set up a date at a dinner, and just several red flags that happened from when they showed up. First of all, very late, which I totally get people being late, but usually you communicate, hey, I'm running late, and that wasn't happening. So I think we had sort of gotten the feeling that we were being stood up, which again happens.
Right.
And so they did show up, and it's one of those situations where as soon as they walk in the door, my partner looks at them and looks at me and he's like, I already know it's a no for you. Like he knows me well enough to say that. And so I was like, yeah, but we'll still have a good time. And so then we proceeded to have a really long meal at a restaurant that was sort of slow, that would never end. And one of the worst parts about it was, obviously, I'm very like female positive. The man answered all the questions for her. And it was exasperating because there was a few times she tried to talk and she was very interesting. And it just made it that you couldn't really ask her because he would answer for her. And it might have been a nervous response, but it was super annoying. And then there was a time I went to the bathroom and she was there and I had like the best few minutes just chatting with her there. So it just felt both annoying that he was answering and that also she wasn't telling him to stop. So that is what I would say one of the worst dates.
Oh my God. Yeah, that sounds terrible. But just imagine like going up to the waiter and being like, look, I'll give you a 50% tip if you will just bring us like the food as fast as possible.
Yeah. Well, now we learn,
Or just say you have to turn the table.
You know what? I think that was one of the last times that we ever gave a weekend night to a couple we've never met before. Now we sort of reserve Thursdays often for if it's a brand new couple. Not to say we go out that many times with a new couple, but if we're going to for the very first time and we don't have any common friends, then we're like, it's better for you and us that first of all, it's a weeknight. So we didn't give up a weekend, but also there's no assuming that we're going to hang out after a meal.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's
you
good.
can just be
Smart.
like, well, gotta work early in the morning.
Yeah. So, and even dates that have gone really well on a Thursday, everybody still has to work. So it's like, great, we get to see each other again and you get to see them in another light. So,
yeah. Would you say that the way that you've kind of structured the Weekday Pineapple group with the like group meetups and, then that being like the entry point to like more intimate activities is like a kind of way around that, or like a way to better navigate meeting new people?
Totally. Yeah. I would think so. But it does limit your options. We're not like that big of a group. We're like 50 people. So doesn't mean you're going to find someone you like or consistently like within that crowd. So, but as far as first dates, the first time you meet people, most people that are brought into the group already have had some sort of sexual relationship with someone that brings them, or at least have gone on dates with them.
So just to make sure like our audience understands what Weekday Pineapple is and how it works.
Gotcha.
The idea, let me know if I have this right. You have in-person meetups and anyone can come.
Anyone can be invited by someone that's in the group.
Anyone can be invited by someone who's in the group. It's not published
publicly.
Okay.
No.
And those meetups are not sexy. They're just like getting to know each other, mingling and hanging out. And then out of those meetups, folks can be brought into the group where you are actually planning like parties and group sex situations.
Good question. Well, this isn't super formal. We don't have bylaws or anything. But yes, I would say I plan twice monthly meetups for that group. I also happen to plan 2 major parties a year. So I would say that most of the people that come to those parties are within the weekday group. There are also other people in the group that regularly plan events. So what they do is typically post an invite to that event within the group. And then all the talking about that goes on somewhere else. So is it an avenue? Absolutely. But also these people might be inviting other people to their events, depending. It's just that the common thread is like a core of, I would say that there's like 20 people that we see almost every time. We're very, like some of our best friends. So they go to almost everything. So I don't personally plan everything. So I don't want to say it's like sponsored by the group, but it is a place for people that are in that group to post events that they want to have. And then I personally have 2 a year.
Okay, so next important question. What's up with the pineapple thing? Because I understand that pineapple is also some kind of like swinger lifestyle symbol.
Specifically an upside down pineapple is a symbol that has, as far as I know, for a long time been kind of a secret way to say who you were. I'm very out, so I don't really need a pineapple, but it is a common way to tell people, basically what to expect, that it's not just a friend group, it's a sexy friend group. So I guess the only issue with saying everyone's pineapple is it's definitely more on the swinger side to say that. Not many people in the poly world identify with a pineapple. So
yeah, and I wonder like what the sort of actual purpose of that symbolism would be. Like, how would that play out? Like, it is true that it's a very different situation if you're like going into like an event with somebody with like many couples. The idea that it would be like okay to be flirting or eventually have sex with the people who are not in your like 2-person unit. That's like a huge social norm that is different in those two settings.
My understanding is that the pineapple thing started in the 90s. Are you looking it up?
I'm looking it up. I want to hear yours.
I believe it started in the 90s when you wouldn't have social media, obviously. And really the communication without being out was you could put an upside down pineapple in your lawn or on your doorstep and you knew who your people were. You knew you could be comfortable there. It can be tricky to know if you're not someone that wants everyone to know your sex life, then you want to know who's a safe space, I guess. So tell me what you found out.
All of that, I was trying to figure out why it's a pineapple.
Oh, sure.
And according to AI,
great.
AI knows all.
The meaning stems from the idea of sharing, which is associated with the fruit. That feels
like
vague.
Hawaiian, maybe sharing. I don't know.
but I'm just like,
well, and it's like too big to eat an entire pineapple.
I don't know. Well, and it's interesting because it's like the most spiky fruit that there is.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. It also has symbolically meant hospitality and welcome in various cultures.
And that's maybe the
Hawaiian part. Interestingly, there's a chain of hotels that are called Pineapple, and they are heavily used for pineapple events. You just wouldn't know. You can stay there and not do anything.
And played with my kids in the pool.
Fun. Well, here's the thing, too, is just because people are swingers does not mean when they get together that they are always sexy. I would say I have a lot of good friends that there's times that we are, but there's a majority of times where we're just hanging out as friends.
Yeah, so. I appreciate that distinction. And like I've sort of like followed the activities through this shared partner that we have. And yeah, it sounds like sometimes you all do kind of typical friend stuff, go out on election night and like watch the returns or try a new restaurant. We had a support group on election nobody was feeling
night
sexy that night?
No one was feeling sexy.
Not
I feel
at
like
all. Nobody in the city of Seattle had sex that night.
No.
I think we actually did.
Yeah, I'm just remembering that we did.
We definitely had some group cuddle. I would say some group cuddle out and about. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, I don't want to dig in too deeply to this idea that there's animosity between polyamorous folks and swingers.
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
The Warren gangs.
Or that like swinging and lifestyle is like pejorated and judged. But I do think like we have to spend some time on it because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode.
Sure.
Is as soon as Alex and I opened up and started exploring being polyamorous, these distinctions between being poly or being a swinger and the sense of them being like very different cultures and often like cultures that don't mingle well was almost automatically there for me. And I'm kind of curious if that's something that you have observed, why you think that is, or maybe like a bigger question is, what do you think are really common misconceptions that people have about swinging or even that polyamorous people have about swinging?
I think that maybe the headbutting might be the principle that poly people are looking for love versus swingers would never be. And I don't think either is true because there's definitely poly people that want to have sexy time and no romance involved. And then there's definitely swingers that are looking for emotional connections. So it's more of a scale, I would say. So in my group, there's both and they intermingle. So, and then me, myself, a number of times, I say I go into it just for the sexiness and the friendship, but I have all levels of love for some very close friends of mine within the lifestyle. And to say that that's in no way poly is crazy. It is a portion of poly. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I get the theory behind why they would butt heads because you would want to be in the group that is similar to you. If you're looking for love, you want others that are looking for love. Otherwise, why are you looking? Versus if you're trying to stay as a cohesive unit without looking for outside love, why you'd be separate. I just think particularly in my group, so many people are somewhere on that spectrum that they're accepting.
Yeah, and I'm realizing as you were talking that probably some of it and what I've heard people express or describe is the couple's privilege element, the assumption that people who are swingers are coming into it as a couple and the unit of the couple is the most important thing and that's always going to be like privileged in some way. So curious about your thoughts on that. And also curious, I don't know if I asked you if you identify as poly as well.
I don't believe I identify as poly, but I also am not good at putting labels on myself because I evolve all the time. But like I said, if it's poly to love the people that you play with, I definitely have play partners that I love. But I'm also really open with my partner that I love them, so, and I think that's really common. So it's hard to say what I identify. I would say, I can't say a blanket no. I definitely identify more on the spectrum of swinger.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how the like connection, the like sort of friend level connection that you're talking about is really kind of devalued, maybe in both of these contexts, but certainly like in a poly context, the idea that like that would be vastly different or it wouldn't count. Or like the like love that you feel for your friends who are in the community with you.
Well, yeah, because if they're your friend, so you're close friendly and you're having sex with them, I don't know how that's much different.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the same because like my partner is my best friend. So the main difference is, I guess, living together.
Well, yeah. And what's the difference between like, what does friends with benefits mean, right? In a one-on-one context. And I feel like maybe the only real meaning is that there's no escalation involved. But then we talk a lot about like in the poly context about like escalation not really like being the thing that you're shooting for, and that being the difference between poly relationships and monogamous relationships.
The situation you have with that person.
Right.
Yeah. With your topic, one thing I was going to say that I learned maybe about a year and a half ago was this term that was toxic monogamy. And that is something that I have seen in lifestyle groups where if the couple that's coming in is only worried about each other, they can be dismissive of others. And so in the same way that you would go out on a date with someone that ends in, whether it's sexual or not, that you would just blow them off the next day, that still applies. So you can't just do that, or you shouldn't do that. It can feel very cold and like transactional. So that I would consider toxic monogamy, is that you're like, well, I checked in with my partner. They're cool. I'm cool. That's really not enough, especially if you want to see them again. You know, that feels cold to me. So I guess doing the aftercare, you know, checking in.
Being relational.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Was that an element of the broiness that you were describing in the previous groups?
Maybe. I think I relate it to people that don't consider themselves lifestyle, but couples where you'll see this posted online all the time. My partner's birthday is coming up, and I really want to find a threesome.
Right.
That idea is very couple monogamous focused because they're just a toy to you. That's an actual person. And if you treat them as such, like the experience for them and you is going to be better. If you just say, come as a gift and then go home and then we don't talk to you again.
Right.
First of all, I don't know who wants to sign up for that.
Right.
I can't imagine often. That also requires aftercare. So I think it's kind of that, but translating it into the lifestyle where couples don't check on each other. Really having a meetup allows people to check on each other often. You know, how's your job today? How are your kids? All of those
You mean
things.
people that they've like had sex with before in that context. Yeah.
You can say, you know, I'm going to see you on Thursday.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what about for you? How did you find yourself in the lifestyle and what do you like about it?
Let's see. How did I find myself in the lifestyle? I've had different permutations of it over the years with different partners, and specifically with my partner now. We came together not trying to be in a serious relationship, trying to date, and then really enjoyed each other's company and really rooted each other on in our dating life, and then essentially moved in together and tried to continue to do that. But we had so much more fun together doing the things that we did. And so it really morphed into lifestyle. I think maybe took longer to get into lifestyle simply because we didn't know an avenue to enter that. There's plenty of websites, but they're not very productive. There's also clubs, but I would say Washington is not a great place for that.
Why do you say that?
Washington tends to be, Seattle tends to be. Did you ever see that commercial where everybody pulls up to a stop sign and they're like, you go, no, you go? That is what I
lived that commercial a lot of times.
Yes. That is the same, I think, with clubs and I would say just lifestyle in general. If you aren't willing to go for it and put yourself out there, nothing happens. You have a lot of like middle school dance mentality where you're just like everybody's staring at each other. So that's not fun for me.
That's happening in the sex clubs?
Oh, yeah.
People
in
are
Washington,
standing
yes.
at the...
I think so. And then like bad music. Yeah. I
what
think
kind of
so.
bad music?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
All right.
I've tried not to go back.
Okay, fair enough.
But I do notice new couples that are like dipping their toe in. That's their first foray. And I would say they go there to watch other people have sex, not necessarily to intermingle. And that's fine. Totally fine. Also in Washington, up until very recently, you couldn't have alcohol in places like that.
Woof.
Yeah.
So the middle school or high school attitude was like so you're wearing not very much, right? And you can't drink, so you want to go back out to your car to have a sip of something. So you're tailgating, but it's cold. And and these places are actually just in like industrial parks. You wouldn't know that they're there. So it's just an interesting atmosphere.
Yeah, that sounds like one way of putting it.
Yeah. So I don't know how we got there on...
Oh, I was asking all kinds of curious questions because...
Yeah. Oh, how did I get there? Yeah.
Yes.
So we tried that out and kind of felt like a dead end. And the next thing we ventured into was something called a hotel takeover. Have you heard of these? Mm-mm. So... there's groups, larger groups than mine, that rent out an entire hotel, and usually for a weekend that includes some sort of holiday typically. And they have parties in the hotel, and no one is staying at the hotel that's not there for that event. So there's different amounts of dress at different times, and usually themes. And they have typically where people will decorate their room, and they have like what they call like a hall crawl, where you'll visit everybody's room, not necessarily for sex, but to say hi to people. People will do all sorts of things. That's called a hotel takeover. So we delved into that. And I will say we met quite a few people through that, but not necessarily because any of us liked hotel takeovers, but it's a really fast way to meet a lot of people. And share information. So I've had a lot of fun at some of those. Really what has worked with people in our group is getting someplace to stay nearby that isn't the hotel, and going to events. And when we felt like I'm a little over it, and we would go back and hang out with each other at the house. Also, it allowed us to like invite people over for brunch. I don't know, it just seemed more personal to us. So that was kind of the medium stage. And I felt like I had met enough people that way that I didn't need that anymore. That now I just have my group, and they meet new people on dates and bring them.
And so it feels like generative and dynamic on its own.
Yeah, but I would say hotel takeovers are pretty generative as well. Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, please, Alex.
I want to ask, if I can, like maybe intrusive follow-up questions about the early part of your relationship with your partner and what you described. Because, like, so you entered that relationship dating monogamy, or like you were both just kind of like dating.
We were dating a lot of people. And we were, so I would say we weren't exclusive.
You weren't exclusive, and you were openly communicating about that dating.
Yeah, we were not looking to be exclusive. Both of us had come out of sort of traumatic breakups, and we're like, not for us, or not, I'm not ready yet. And a little bit of shared trauma brought us together, and talking through that. And then each other's misadventures in dating, we would have a bad date and check in like, well, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? And if their date was going great, you were like, oh, that's a bummer, but I'm glad that they're having fun. So we just got more and more together. And then we started going out on dates with other couples, and we had such a great time. So I think with us, neither of us have ever really had the jealousy bone. I've never had that with my other partners. And I know I don't think that that's as common. I think there's a lot of people that struggle with that a lot. And I don't want to say I never am jealous. I just enjoy seeing my partner happy so much that at parties, at events, just, I don't know, I like seeing them have fun with me, have fun with other people. Same vice versa.
So it sounds like through that dating non-exclusively, but maybe not in like a poly context exactly, you like built a really strong relationship and came up with a level of like commitment to each other, right? Which I think is being codified in law soon, perhaps.
Yes. They are my spouse, yes.
Yeah. And I just think it's interesting because like being able to kind of like make that relationship transition and then also finding within that you want to be like interacting with other people.
I don't know that we ever sat down and had a conversation about it. Yeah. It was definitely what I remember sharing with other people about what I liked about him, and then what I'd hear him tell his friends what he liked about me is that we could both be whatever we were. And we both actively asked each other, you know, we are... I don't want to say how old I am. We are a certain age now. And what do you want to do? Is there stuff that you want to do, sexually or not, that you haven't been doing for some reason? And let's reevaluate if the reason still exists. And so that could mean travel. It could mean a sexy experience. It can mean all sorts of things. And we still do this to this day. We regularly check in and say, like, what are you into right now? Because we both evolve. Like, there might be something I'm really into and I want to make happen. If there's something he really wants to make happen, I love making it happen. It's so much fun. And then also sometimes things don't end up being as cool as you think that they are. So I remember that early on, it was a big connector because neither of us had that exactly in that way previously in other relationships, where you could express, you know, I'm into this and not think that the other person was going to use it against you or feel like it was a reason that they couldn't trust you. So just open communication. So
yeah, and also with somebody who's like sort of kindred spirit in that way.
Yes,
it sounds like,
yeah.
Right?
I'm curious about things that you were excited about experiencing and then experienced them and were like, okay, that was not as fun as I thought it was. And partly I'm interested in this because I want us to have a chance to talk a little bit about how people might know if this is something for them, how people, people might know that.
How me people.
People like you.
And, you know, I think like that's a big part of the learning, as I've been listening to you talk about it and other people talk about it, is that you try things and find out that sometimes it's really different than you expected, or what you like is different than you expected.
Yeah, I had thought that it would be really fun if there was just one me, but a lot of male people around me. And though it's fun to have the attention, I realized through that I really like getting to know people more than that allows. So it's one of those check, did it, don't need to do it again situations. So there's that. As far as like sex parties, I did not think that I would necessarily like that. I liked the idea of having a party that was just a party and that there might be people that we would exchange information with. And then over time, it morphed into, why is that I don't like the idea of the party? And what it was is obligation. And so I throw parties now. I do not plan sex. I plan ridiculous activities, some sexy, some not. Basically games that you would have played as a kid that you don't get to play anymore. I love doing stuff like that. All sorts of things. So like we do scavenger hunts. We do weird bingo, you know, stuff like that. And lots of costuming. We do a lot of cooking for each other, stuff like that. Sexy stuff always evolves from these things. So not always, but also there's no obligation to take part in any of it, even games I plan, which actually I have a really good mini story on that. Recently in October, I threw one of my larger events, and there was a couple that was planning to come, and through the process sort of saw how much I plan, which is a lot. I plan who's cooking when, who's cleaning when, who's in charge of making an activity on what day. And they had privately sent me a message like, we didn't realize that this wasn't just sitting around and chilling for a weekend. And definitely that's not what it is. And some people really want that. And so it made the opportunity for me to tell them, you're not obligated at all to take part in anything. You can still come and have that be your weekend. That's fine too. And I went through a period of asking other people, do you feel like I plan too much? And well, our shared partner said to me, Lissa, this is why I go to them, because I show up and I plan nothing and I know I'm going to have a great time. That is like music to my ears. I love that idea. I want people to show up and have everything taken care of. One of the things I like to do is have it cost one price and you just show up, so all your food is covered, all of your
like an all-inclusive weekend.
And, I've gone back and forth on that. The next one, we might have food be separate. Just who knows? But it's evolving. So I used to think that I didn't like sex parties, but I guess I didn't like
poorly planned sex parties.
Poorly planned ones.
Right. This is so interesting because the three of us, and Jessica and I, just spent like the Thanksgiving weekend at a sort of like destination out of town with like 20 people. And it was very similar to what you're describing. It was like highly organized by some people. And we had to like figure out where everybody was going to stay and like who was going to cook which meals. And maybe it wasn't as organized as what you're describing, but organized enough. And it's just interesting to think about how, in spite of the fact that we are poly and a bunch of the other people there were poly, none of us ended up having sex with each other. And it was like, nobody thought that was going to happen.
No.
Nobody thought that no sex was going to happen?
No, nobody thought that any sex was going to happen.
No one was disappointed.
No one was disappointed. So it's just like, I guess I just think it's interesting, like how you're saying that it just kind of is happening and it's not planned, but certainly sometimes it's planned that it's not happening.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
That it being on the table and something that people can opt into is something that's like a clear container that's been built.
Yeah. Well, and I think it helps that a lot of the people that come to them have already played with each other. So they feel comfortable trying to initiate. And then as you have new people, they notice the comfort maybe. So...
Yeah, and maybe this is a common shared misconception that people have about polyamorous folks and swingers, that it's just you're all having sex with each other all the time, and that's the only type of relationship that you're having. Right. It reminds me of the kind of like classic, if you come out to someone new as polyamorous, they're immediately like, well, I can't date you, or maybe I can date you. It's like, okay, well, we weren't talking about you. But, I think like that just assumption that because this one cultural expectation has been dismantled, now there are no...
Well, and that's like akin to like a homophobic response, maybe when you come out as queer to somebody and they are like, oh, that means you're attracted
that also
to me.
Or
the assumption that, I'm bisexual, therefore I like all women. And no, if I don't like all men, chances are I don't like all women in that way. So I think that same thing. They're not having sex all the time. I'm not always having sex with women just because I'm bisexual. I'm just open to it.
So that leads into another, I think, cliches about the lifestyle that people have, that like kind of all the women are bi and all the men are straight.
I would say a predominant number of women, at least in my group and my exposure to lifestyle, are bisexual. There are definitely straight women for sure. I would say people that consider themselves just lifestyle and wouldn't consider themselves poly, that are male identifying, I would say a majority of them would outwardly say that they're straight. I don't know how much that's true, but that's for them. But I tend to be drawn more to people that are willing to say that they're bisexual, not because I need them to perform for me, but the comfort level is really nice, that everybody's okay with each other. That doesn't mean you play with each other, but the idea, the bro-y thing, the idea that, so if I have 2 women and 2 men and the 2 women are bisexual, somehow I have to be on for all people, but the men really only have to be on for... Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That is a lot of pressure, but then also it can be like a wall between the 2 men. And if I want to identify a lot with the woman, even if I'm not having sex with her, I feel like the men should be able to feel that way too. And so I've noticed that people that identify as bisexual or bicurious or any males that are like that, they just feel more comfortable. To me, I feel safer with it. Safer is the wrong word, but I'm definitely way more drawn to that. I think also just a warmth that comes along with it, acceptance. I don't know.
And an interruption of the male gaze. I mean, if I'm being
what I was thinking about.
Really frank about some of the possible misconceptions I have about swinging, sex parties, and group sex in environments that aren't like explicitly queer. It's that there's going to be a lot of performing for the male gaze. And I think that's one of the things that like holds me back. There's plenty of things that like hold me back or make me nervous. But I think that's one of them, is that and that idea of the women and femmes being bi or queer and the men not kind of reinforces that idea of like a performative sexuality for the male gaze that I just like gets the ick on me so fast.
Sure.
Men aren't interested in each other or like really have a dividing line between them, then anything that you're doing with another woman is going to kind of like be by nature being like sort of witnessed by them. And then maybe it's, you know, it's not like they're over here doing their own thing, completely ignoring you. Like, and then maybe it's like,
I can see why you would feel that way. And maybe that was one of the vibes that I felt with other groups or Hotel Takeover sometimes, that there's a theme and it's mostly the women dressing up and the men are just there too. That's not great. I don't like that in situations either. I don't like that in parties, and I don't sense that as much in parties that I've been to more recently at all.
Yeah, and I think this gets back to like what you were trying to say about, you know, you don't want to label people who identify as straight as not straight, but to me, like men who are like comfortable having group sex with other men, which is like not a thing that most straight men are doing for whatever reason, for a lot of reasons, and who are like expressing themselves in like, you know, like costume play or things like that. Like all that stuff is queer. Right.
Yeah,
and so it does seem like it's a different type of person, however they want to label themselves, that they are like clearly like,
or accepting of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that men that take part in this kind of thing are more expressive of how they're feeling and maybe looking for what do I like rather than just assuming I must be born straight. So,
yeah. And at the very least, they're comfortable having a really intimate bond with another man, even if it's not like a sexual attraction bond necessarily. Like, that is, you know, it's extremely intimate, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there are different ways that it can be. And sometimes it can be intimate and relational, and sometimes it isn't.
What do you mean?
Just in...
Like you're talking about the bad experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That there's not... It doesn't mean that just because people are getting together and being naked and having sex that it's going to be intimate and relational.
Right.
But that you have to kind of cultivate that.
Yeah.
There's an interesting term when you are a male-female couple and another male-female couple and everyone considers them straight and they do this swap thing. It's called parallel play. And I hate that.
Why do you hate it?
Well, it's like I'm here with this partner that I love. I'm getting to know these other people. And it now restricts me to only focus on this one person and them to only focus on me. I can see why some people would like that, especially if you're hoping to get outside of your relationship and try something out. But I like it when like you can touch anything in given permission, but like, what if I want to talk to the woman while, you know, like, what if I want to be involved in this situation that's going on over here? Parallel play is definitely like restrictive to that. And typically that's what I notice happens with super, super straight men that are in the lifestyle, which I just know less and less of them all the time. So
why do you think that is?
Could be that like minds come together. Who knows? I'm sure that there's super, super straight men out there. And they just, maybe I'm not appealing to them. Yeah. I do think that like my personality in particular might challenge those types of people and they wouldn't like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So even the straight men that I know are very accepting of bisexual men, gay men. So...
Okay, so I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to circle back, you know, to me again. And some of
I like it.
The things that make me like nervous or that I have questions about. And I heard you say like, you are one of these magical people who doesn't experience jealousy. Congratulations. That's so great for you.
Yeah.
We're all so happy for you. It's wonderful. But for people who do, or who are scared of like the idea of being compared or rejected. Like what about us? How would you like give advice to someone to navigate some of those feelings if they're interested in trying out swinging?
So if you're saying it coming in as a couple, my advice would be to actually put on your calendar time to talk to your partner about that exact subject and say, how are you feeling? How did that situation make you feel? And understanding that you're going to come in contact with situations that make you feel jealous. I don't want to say I never feel jealous. It's just that I talk it through with my partner, and I try not to put myself in that exact situation again. Most of the time, if it was anything that made either of us jealous, it's totally unintentional. You know, it might have been an undertone. So coming as a couple, good communication. Here, like if you had something that's triggering you, to say that. Don't feel like that makes you seem weak, that you feel that way. In some ways, with my partner, if he knew I was jealous of something, he'd be like, ooh, she likes me. She actually thinks that I'm worth fighting for. I mean, he knows that, but still. And then I wonder, as a single person or a single unit going into that, I guess there's not as much jealousy in that, but the needing to perform.
Or, I mean, what I was writing down is like the fear of rejection, the comparing yourself. I mean, that's one of the things that I know would be challenging for me is like comparing myself physically to other people, or comparing like, my performance, or, the idea of like popularity.
Oh, yeah.
And like some people are going to be popular, and but, those kinds of fears.
Yeah. I totally get that fear. I don't like ever the feeling of mean girls. Does that make sense? And if you can eliminate that from your world altogether, you'll find that there is a network of body positivity. I, in particular, am drawn to not the super youthful, you look perfect attitude. I would rather you be real. And so at least in the groups I'm part of, you can just be you, and there's all spectrum. I don't feel like anyone's comparing anyone. As far as if you felt that way internally, maybe it would be a good exercise in realizing that that isn't the case. I'm curious to see. I have an example in my head where there was a party that we had. We always get a hot tub. It's just like a common thread of parties. But we took a picture with all of the women, no clothes, on, like standing on the edge, full daylight picture. And it was just for us, just the women that were in the picture. And I still look at that picture and I'm like, none of us are perfect. And it is just, you could see the love. And I felt like that's the energy I feel. So none of us are models, nor would we want to be. I like that we've all had life. A lot of us have had children. There's kind of a sexiness to that. So
it's so interesting too how the things that I can find sexy, I imagine other people judging me for. So as you and I were talking, I'm like, well, I am drawn to people who are my age. I'm drawn to people who have had life experiences. I'm drawn to people who have like their like bodies and physical appearance and sexuality are unique and have personality. And then of course it's so hard to turn that same idea on me. And I'm like, but I imagine everyone else is judging me by some different standard entirely.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the saying where if you ever knew, or you would care a lot less about what everybody thought about you if you knew how little that they did? So say you go to a party, if everyone was there nervous about their own body, no one's caring about or judging yours. I mean, I can't remember a single time where I've been to a party and thought, or can even remember what anyone's bodies said to me. I remember that they were there in their personality, but I'm not like, wow, that person, any body quality. So I can imagine most people don't. I can't speak for everyone. And maybe it's that choosing the right people.
It is interesting, too, that you're suggesting, I feel like you are speaking directly to my anxiety.
I was, yeah.
And my anxiety is always imagining, like, the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that might happen to me here? And, like, could I tolerate it? And it's interesting for you to be like, it could be that you would go and actually none of that would be the case. And you won't know unless you try.
And it could be that you went and you were just going to watch the first time. And it could be that you're like, oh, everyone seems okay. Maybe this time I do this. And you realize it's not as scary. Maybe you tiptoe. I don't know.
Interesting.
I know. Who am I to say?
It is.
And, when you say like sex party, say you had a house, doesn't mean everyone's in one room having sex either. There's lots of avenues to have sex privately.
Okay,
in that
so
too.
You're shattering one of the images in my head.
Good. Let's shatter them all. Yeah.
What made you decide to be out and open as a swinger? I know you've mentioned a couple of times that you don't try and hide it at all.
Well, I don't try to hide being out with people beyond my primary relationship. I guess that's the biggest thing I don't hide. When I see people that are my friends that we play with regularly, we may act like a couple when we're out, and I don't pretend not to, even if I see a coworker or I guess family. I don't have as much family that I would run into, or my partner friends, people that we've never sat down and told them. I'm not hiding anything. We've joked before about waiting for someone to come up to us and be like, I am so sorry to tell you this, but I saw your partner with doing this, and us to just get a laugh out of that. It's never happened. And I think it's because people just don't care. And Seattle maybe is more accepting. People just don't care. Yeah.
Hey, Poly Peeps. How's dating going? Are you getting matches on the apps? Have you been on any fun dates lately? If you're like the rest of us, your answer is probably no. Seattle Inclusive Matchmaking has the answer. Get off apps that weren't made for us and give Seattle Inclusive Matchmaking a try. We offer personalized matchmaking services for poly people, as well as speed dating and other exclusive events. Search for Seattle Polyamory Matchmaking and Speed Dating on Facebook, or find us at seattle-inclusive-matchmaking.square.site. That's seattle-inclusive-matchmaking.square.site. Resolve to date better in the new year.
Okay, so coming back out of the break, I was going to talk about my sex party experience.
Is that why I caught you trying to sneak out the bathroom window?
That's what I tried to do at the sex party, too, actually.
It's a classic Alex
They were
move.
locked. Painted shut. Yeah, certainly this experience that I had at a sex party that I went into pretty I was just pretty much it's going to be fine. I'm going to just kind of do whatever. I was pretty excited about it. I went with a partner who is no longer my partner, but, sort of a secondary partner, I guess. But somebody who I'd been in a relationship with for a long time, for 2 or 3 years. And it was I had a good experience with some of the games part of it that were not the games that you're more explicitly sort of sexy than the games that it sounds like you're describing. But and that was fun, and being in intimate spaces with more men was definitely fun, and I enjoyed it, and meeting new people was great. And then we kind of got to this point where it was okay, I'm going to enable her to have sex with this other guy. And I felt pretty good about that. And then I felt good about it kind of until the point where I didn't.
Yeah.
And it was kind of clear that we the three of us sort of had a rapport socially, I would say, in the earlier parts of the party. And then it was once it became sexual, then it was really just about the two of them.
Oh,
and,
gotcha.
He was not really that interested in me, it seemed like. And I just got kind of activated, and I was okay, I'm going to leave for a little while.
Oh. That probably didn't help.
Get out of the situation. Maybe it didn't. Yeah. And then it was just really kind of hard to come back or to be into anything else that was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what to say with all of that.
That sounds very I don't know. That seems like a normal emotion to have. I don't know. I can see that there would be a lot of people that would be I didn't like this situation that happened. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could happen in any situation. But yeah, particularly sexually, shutting yourself down doesn't enable you to continue to be sexy in that, right? If you're feeling turned off by a situation or feeling alone.
Yeah, that's what I was struck by. I think in that story, what it sounds like to me is that you were lonely and kind of isolated and didn't feel connected to the person that you were there with or really connected to anyone else there.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's true.
If you go as a couple or if you go with other people to an event where there's going to be people that you aren't as comfortable with or you've not had this kind of conversation with, having words or symbols or gestures that mean something are really valuable. So like the universal one for me with most of the women that I know is if they ask me for water, that means that they need me to be near them. So I bring them water and then I stay there.
Yeah.
So whether they mean that or not, it's usually one that I try to tell other people. So I don't know, maybe expressing that if you had gone in with that partner and said, you know, I may be open to something, but then maybe I'm suddenly not. And how should I express that to you? Because what if you got their eyesight and you were like, and then they were able to, you know, tap out if they.
Yeah, I think the thing the mistake that I made there was probably being sort of too cavalier about it.
Mistakes were made?
Going in, exactly. We have to say that at least once every episode. Maybe like also just sort of overestimating the level of like trust I had with the person. Which I guess like sort of to like map that to other people's potential experience. It's hard to know. Like I didn't know going in that maybe I didn't have that. Like I thought we had a pretty like
did it turn you off to going to future events like that?
For sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Because you assumed it would be similar.
Yeah, or just like don't really want to
watch your partner.
Or, well, I wouldn't say that across the board because, like, you know, I've like watched my partners in other situations. I think it was maybe it's hard to figure out exactly what were the things. I definitely didn't know anybody else at the party really. So it was like, oh, neither did either of us. So it was like really coming in cold and then just like going really kind of hard right out the gate. So maybe that's some of the mistake, but
at the times that I've had parties where several of the people didn't know each other, maybe I was the only common denominator. I would have a dinner like a week or two ahead so you could meet other people that were coming because having the first time you meet someone feel like pressure to play with them before you know them for me is not, I just couldn't my brain's not there.
Yeah, and I think people have sort of like fantasies about that, or maybe like
anonymous
about really not knowing people.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, I think it's like harder to manifest that.
Sure.
Especially based on what you're saying about like, you know, your experiences at like swinger sex clubs.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
It like, it's not really working out for that many people.
Maybe it is. Right? I think it is. I think that especially because there's a bunch of couples that they want to watch other people have sex in real life, not porn. Do you know what I mean?
Right. But that would sound like a group of voyeurs and a group of exhibitionists kind of.
Yeah. So maybe that's what that's appealing to. And I do think people meet other couples there, exchange information for later times. I also have heard a lot of couples where that's where they go for their first date. So like with another couple, they'll be like, we're not sure. Let's go there. And it makes a sexy atmosphere, I guess.
So one thing I'd jump in here with is as a therapist works with like queer poly communities, I hear a lot of people talk about being activated in group sex situations and at sex parties. Like I would say, and at sex clubs. It's like it's a theme in the sessions that I do with people. And I guess one of the things I'm considering as we're talking is that maybe that's normal. Like maybe it's normal that going into these situations, you might experience some activation, or it might be challenging in some ways, or you might be surprised by what you like and what you don't like. And that normalizing that for yourself and people you're
knowing
going
that
with.
Everybody feels that way.
Knowing that everyone feels that way. And it's not like, I think this again speaks to my fears and anxiety is that I'm going into a situation where everybody's just really fucking cool and I'm panicking. Right? Which probably.
And that's like how I felt.
Well, here's a misnomer is that like we all must be cool people. Like I actually would prefer you not be cool. Like I would rather you be a total nerd. I will identify with you. And then also I have the experience of feeling like growing up and maybe in some ways not feeling accepted or part of the cool crowd and wanting to, whenever I notice anybody else is like coming in brand new, that like, I want to shelter that person and be like, welcome, what can I help you with? And being next to them. And that goes with the vetting people that will foster that, know? So you need to be part of a group that would look out for you in that way and not make you feel like we all have a joke and you're not on the inside of the joke.
When you say cool, you mean secure.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, and I guess I'm realizing
awkward though. I like awkward.
Well,
awkward
good.
people.
Well, great. We're going to get along great. No, I think what I'm noticing is, when 4 seasons of mistakes were made, what I'm saying over and over and over again is polyamory can be difficult. And it can and will be difficult for everyone. And the expectation that for it to be successful or right for you is that it's never hard. Or that there's like a contingent of people out there for whom it would never be hard. Is not actually true in my experience. That there are things that are hard about any type of relationship.
Yes, yeah.
There are things that are hard about any type of like sexual vulnerability or exploration.
Sure.
Right? Like we are in territory that is just challenging. And embracing that challenge and being able to communicate across it and with each other and ourselves is actually why we're doing it. That's like where the learning is happening. But it's so... That understanding is so fleeting for me at times. And so I was just thinking about that at the sex party and the way you've described it to me as like, I just imagine it as this like giant underheated mansion.
It was a mansion. It was well heated.
It was well heated. I don't know why.
Oh boy.
To me, it's cold. And everybody there is just like performing for each other and being like super cool. And
yeah, I think that was part of the challenge is that there was a lot of...
The environment was not cozy.
Yeah, and the environment was not... There was not really a lot of work to build trust. And then that was paired with... And like, again, this is like maybe not fair to like every single person who was there.
Yeah.
But there was also like sort of like an aloofness or like everybody was kind of presenting as like, we are like... beyond secure and have reached a higher plane of existence that like makes us okay with everything. And like,
do you think people are like faking it until they make it?
I don't know. I mean, partly that voice is coming from me.
Sure.
Right? Like, I don't know if that's actually what they're saying, but like maybe they actually were, maybe, but probably, my assumption is that when people present as very like grounded and self-assured, I'm like, I don't believe you.
Well,
that's because I know I present that way.
People will tell me that I seem really confident and I think I fake it till I make it kind of thing too. Like I'm definitely not the most secure person. So I think it's totally normal. You were saying something that I find interesting, and it's some people say, well, like monogamy is hard, so the solution is polyamory. That doesn't really make sense because they're both hard,
They're
right?
both hard.
And say you're struggling with lifestyle or polyamory, doesn't mean the solution is the opposite, right? So I don't think that you can say with any of these, like going from lifestyle to poly, like it doesn't make it any easier. It's just different.
And in some ways, it's about, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think polyamory and like sexual exploration and like exploring my queerness, all of that has been about expanding my tolerance for discomfort a little bit, so that there is also an expanded space for joy. And I think like those two things just really live in relationship to each other in me. And I can sometimes forget about that. And I'm like, oh, we're supposed to get to the place where it's just all the joy. And it's like, well, no, Sarah, you get there through expanding.
And you can't plan it.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Right. Like, tonight's the joy night.
Unfortunately not. But Lissa, since you're such a good planner, I was wondering if maybe you could do that for me.
Plan joy.
Here's your hour and a half of emotional discomfort, and here's your 3 hours of joy.
I actually think that you would enjoy doing something ridiculous, like playing some sort of game that is totally innocuous, but now you play it with sexy friends. Like, there's this game called Telestrations. I'm not sure if you know this, but it's like Pictionary in that you draw something with no words, and then you hand it to the person to your left, and they flip and they write what they think it is, and then they draw it, and it goes all the way around. But we play this, but it's sexy, so just the terms are hilarious, and then how someone would draw that is so comical, and it teaches you about other people. Like, wow, you're a really good drawer, or just the laughing and the comfort that
is not what people would be learning about me in that game. But thank you for gesturing in my direction.
But maybe they would like that you can't, right? Or maybe
I
your hand.
I'm an expressive drawer.
Ooh, good. But I think just playing, like taking away the how you said you felt it was sort of awkward, or what did you say?
I think you said aloof, maybe.
Aloof, yeah. Like no one was caring to get to know each other.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hearing you saying and describing in like everything that you do is like it all sounds like it's like a lot of trust building.
Well, that's my preference. Yeah. I don't find it fun, like I said, to have like super anonymous sex. So, yeah.
And I also am appreciating that, just as someone who's more demi. I think there's an assumption that I've made that sex parties and certain types of group sex or swinging wouldn't be accessible to me because of that. So it's interesting to have that misconception really directly addressed.
Because there's going to be sex parties that everyone, maybe you had enough people there that you've had sex with before that no one's new to you, but it's enough people to call it a party. Right? Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, because what is a party? You know, 5 people? 6? I don't know.
That's a great question. I feel like it's 8.
I think it's 4 people and 2 cats.
Oh, definitely.
So this is actually a party.
Set. We are set. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lissa. And thank you so much to everybody for listening to Mistakes Were Made. Listeners, if you want to get in touch with Lissa and get involved with the Weekday Pineapple group, you can reach out to her at weekdaypineapple@gmail.com. And thank you for listening to Mistakes Were Made. Please find us on Instagram at MistakesCast, and look out for pictures of our new kittens, Nugget and Lucky. They'll be there. We're going to exploit them for internet fame. And please subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Thanks, Lissa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.